Hello guys, it's Diplo here and this is a basic Holy-Paladin guide where I'm going to discuss things like talent choices, gearing, and basic class mechanics. So hope you guys will enjoy it and find something useful. Let's start with talents. There are two talent trees that I would recommend. Which one to use depends on how much crit chance you have. You want to aim for around 40% crit chance while having kings on yourself. When you hit around 40 to 45%, you can swap between Sanctity of Battle and Divinity, which will basically decrease your crit chance but increase your healing then, and vice versa. When you hit around 45 to 47% crit chance, you should change to a second talent tree. By doing that, you will lose 5 to 8% crit chance depending on your previous spec, but you will gain one of the most powerful raid cooldowns in the game, an opportunity to use Righteous Fury in some situations, which will decrease all damage you take by 6% and also give all your auras 6% healing increase. This buff doesn't stack with Tree Form buff. And for the glyphs, there's not much wiggle room here. For major glyphs, you should go for Glyph of Holy Light, which will make your Holy Light heal 5 additional targets for 10% of the healing done. Glyph of Beacon of Light, which will increase your duration of it. And Glyph of Seal of Wisdom, which will decrease mana cost of your healing spells by 5%. For minor glyphs, get Glyph of Lay on Hands, and the rest of them are up to you. Now let's talk about gearing and stats. Your main stat will be Intellect due to Holy Guidance, Divine Plea, high mana cost of your spells, and replenishment. You want to get around 2000 Intellect without any buffs to reach diminishing returns in the raid scenario. Haste is your most important secondary stat. Your diminishing returns hit at around 900 haste, which you should aim to get as fast as you can. But you don't have haste cap since your Holy Light won't reach 1 second cast time with available best in slot gear, so try to aim for as much haste as you can. Now critical rating. I touched the stat a bit previously, but this is your second most important secondary stat due to Illumination talent and the nature of your spell crit efficiency. So aim for around 40% base critical chance. MP5 near useless stat for Holy Paladins, since your main tools for mana gain are gonna be replenishment, divine plea and melee attacks with Seal of Wisdom. Many plate items have crit and MP5 stats, which is rarely worth using unless it's a huge item level upgrade. Hit rating. This stat is not mentioned enough, but 8% melee hit rating is an important part of the class. Your Judgment of Light is a huge part of your healing output. It is also counted as a melee attack, so having melee hit cap will make it impossible to miss. You will reach this cap with Plaguebringer Stained Pants and Enlightened Judgments. Gemming is pretty straightforward for Holy Paladins. Gem your headpiece with Insightful Earthsiege Diamond and Nightmare Stare, and gem everything else with Brilliant King's Amber. For professions, I would suggest going for jewel crafting and engineering. Jewel crafting will give you more intellect on gems, which will help you reach diminishing returns faster, and engineering will give you a nice haste cooldown, and rocket boots, which you can use to avoid or position yourself for raid mechanics like swarming shadows, defile, malleable goo, debuffs on Hallion encounter, or just use it for situational fast positioning for healing uptime. I won't discuss enchants a lot since you can pause the video and read it yourself instead of being lazy. The only thing I will mention is weapon enchant. Most of the guides say that 30 intellect enchant on your weapon is the best choice, but that's only the case until you reach your intellect diminishing return value of around 2000. After that, spell power becomes more effective, so get 63 spell power on your weapon at that point. Now for best in slot item lists. I'm not gonna provide you with it in this video, but I will post a link in the description to my website where you can find different lists for gear choices, and maybe some posts about tips, tricks, and interesting mechanics of Paladin class. Now let's talk about playstyle. There is a common misconception that Paladin is just a tank healer. Holy Paladin is the most versatile healing class in this expansion, and I will tell you why. The biggest reason is variety of your spells. I will group them by healing spells, healing cooldowns, mana gain, and utility. These are your main tools for healing output. Holy Light. This is your main bread and butter healing spell, which you will be spamming most of the time, with high mana cost, long cast time, and high output. Flash of Light. Fast, less powerful, but really mana efficient spell, which most people overlook. Gives you a healing over time effect due to infusion of light talent. So you should use it on people with Sacred Shield when raid or tanks are not taking much damage. Holy Shock. Really mana inefficient spell, mostly used as an emergency tool when someone drops to a really low HP, or when moving. Beacon of Light. Spell that distinguishes this class from others, mostly used on tanks with some fight-related exceptions. Judgment of Light. Percentage HP gain scales really well with raid buffs, so keep 100% uptime on current melee DPS target. Lay on Hands. Basically your oh shit button, used in emergency situations. Can be used as a damage mitigation cooldown with improved Lay on Hands. Healing cooldowns. One of the things that make Paladin class really strong. Because you generally have more of them than any other healing class, and they are extremely powerful. Cooldown usage is also one of the biggest problems that I see Paladins have. Most of people don't use them at all, or waste them on ineffective time windows. The correct windows will be discussed in a separate videos about boss fights. Avenging Wrath directly increases healing output, mostly used when raw power is needed on heavy raid or tank damage. Can also be used to mitigate healing reduction from Divine Plea. Has percentage healing increase, so works on Judgment of Light and Glowing Twilight skill, as well as any other healing spells. Divine Illumination. More versatile spell that can be used as the biggest healing increase cooldown if combined with tier 10 set 2-piece bonus, or as mana preserving spell, best used when both scenarios are needed. Also has percentage increase on healing done, so works with things mentioned before and stacks with Avenging Wrath. Glowing Twilight Scale or GTS, best in slot trinket for any healing class due to its high passive spell power bonus and active effect value. Another AoE healing tool which mitigates the weak part of Paladin's kit, which is AoE healing, used only in heavy raid damage situations. Divine Favor, another rarely used spell, can be combined with all three main healing spells in different scenarios. Big powerful heal with Holy Light, emergency critical Holy Shock on dead gnome mage pulling all trash, or Flash of Light for a really mana efficient heal. Mana gain. This is also what separates a good paladin from an average one, since good paladin will always find ways to replenish or preserve mana without losing efficiency or output. You have two main tools to do that, which are Divine Plea, extremely powerful mana gain cooldown due to its scaling with your total intellect, reduces healing by 50% for the duration, so figure out timing when much damage won't be taken by anyone to lose the least amount of healing possible. Healing reduction can be counteracted with healing cooldowns mentioned before. Seal of Wisdom. While having 8% melee hit cap combined with decently fast main hand weapon and percentage scaling with total intellect, this is also a very strong tool to replenish your mana if you are able to hit something on appropriate time windows. Have in mind that your Judgment of Light is also counted as a melee attack and it can also proc Seal of Wisdom. Now the last one applies only for Horde, and that is Blood Elves with their racial ability, Arcane Torrent. Percentage amount combined with a short cooldown lets you have a choice to swap your Libram for more healing output. Absolutely amazing racial for Holy-Paladins. Utility. Now this is exactly what your class is made for and where it shines. This is where versatility kicks in. This is why I love playing this class more than anything. And also why I get upset about other paladins the most. So if you don't use all of these spells at least once per raid, and you consider yourself a good paladin, well, I have bad news for you. I will try to go over most of these spells briefly since there's a lot of them, but I will include more specific timings, tips and tricks in videos about boss fights in the future. Let's start with damage mitigating spells. Aura Mastery, damage prevention cooldown used in conjunction with appropriate resistance aura to negate incoming ray damage, for example Shadow Aura Mastery on Infest at Lich King or Blood Queen's Air Phase. Divine Sacrifice, combined with Divine Guardian talent, is the most powerful raid cooldown in the game that can prevent insane amount of raid, party or tank damage. Used in similar situations and can be combined with Aura Mastery for even higher effect. Hand of Sacrifice, single target spell mostly used on tanks for damage prevention or negating damage from specific raid mechanics like Soul Reaper on Lich King or Swarming Shadows on Blood Queen. Must be used in conjunction with some personal defensive like Divine Shield or Divine Protection. Divine Protection, personal defensive cooldown used to mitigate damage from Hand of Sacrifice and Divine Guardian effects. Certain raid mechanics like Swarming Shadows in Blood Queen or Soul Consumption in Hellion encounter, or can just be used to prevent any incoming damage on yourself. Divine Shield, strongest personal defensive in your kit, can be used to completely avoid raid mechanics, prevent all damage taken, or just reset your aggro. Sacred Shield gains an absorb if the target is being hit by physical attacks and increases the paladin's flash of light critical chance by 50% while the shield lasts. With infusion of light and divine guardian talents, becomes a nifty tool for people taking direct hits, so mainly tanks. Great global cooldown filler in situations where you have to move. Hand of Protection makes a target immune to physical damage, mainly used on trash pulls and those pesky gnome mages. Man, fucking gnomes. Anyway, cannot be used on tanks since it resets aggro. Righteous Fury, combined with improved Righteous Fury, can be a situational damage mitigation tool with infinite duration. Highly increases aggro generated through healing spells, so use it only in fights with no adds and with low tank movement. Always watch your threat if you do decide to use it. Hand of Salvation, really important spell in your arsenal which can gain a lot of raid DPS because your DPS classes won't have to stop DPSing in some cases if you use it correctly, and your tanks will have way easier time managing aggro and their damage mitigation. You should spam the spell on cooldown in pretty much any fight. Best target choices are those warriors that think they are Jesus on the opener and nothing can touch them, or again those gnome mages in the later stages of the fight. Hand of Freedom, situational tool used in specific times, for example, on tanks in Syndragosa encounter to lose slow effect from the boss, on people standing in slime on Rotface encounter too long to get rid of the snare effect, or on people with soul consumption in heroic version of Hellion encounter to avoid slow effect after debuff is dispelled. Cleanse, the most proficient dispel tool from all classes due to its ability to dispel 3 types of debuffs. Make sure you practice the spell as much as you can because it will be a vital part of some encounters due to specific debuff mechanics, and Paladin should always be a first choice on the dispelling duty. What and when to dispel is gonna be discussed in following guides about encounters. Hammer of Justice, a handy tool to have in some fights. Can stun people affected by mind control mechanic or adds on some fights. Also works for stunning Valkyries on Lich King encounter. Holy Wrath only affects demons and undead, so it's very useful for adds on trash pulls. Also works on Valkyries on Lich King. There is only so much information you can put into one video and there's a lot of things missing, but I tried to provide you with basics which should help you getting started, or maybe teach more experienced players a thing or two they didn't know. Although big part of information provided in this guide is my personal opinion, acquired through raiding and testing, so don't take it as a bible of any sort. Now for the missing information, like add-ons, keybinds, raid UI, and your interface setup, it will all be included into separate guide, as well as every aspect about boss fights from Holy-Paladin perspective will be made into boss fight guides in the future, so stay tuned. I hope something was useful for you in this video and I was not very annoying to listen to, so thanks for watching.